What's good, Cowboys Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Doc Talk with our guy, Dr. Boothby, who does a fantastic job covering all things in regards to the medical aspect over at OSMI. How's it going, Doc?
Hey guys, how are you? Happy Monday to everybody, and seeing a little of this spring weather turn into summer. I'm kind of enjoying it. Got some draft talk. We got a whole bunch of stuff to talk going on.
Yeah, the weather's turning the page, and the Cowboys, we're turning the page to the draft. And honestly, I'm pretty happy because usually they'll draft a guy or guys with a whole bunch of injuries, and
Right.
they didn't really do that this year. They kind of avoided that from a draft standpoint, Doc. But they did sign an undrafted free agent, one of the most popular guys in Hunter Luepke, a fullback, tight end, halfback, do-it-all, versatile guy who was having a standout career at North Dakota State until he got injured. You know, he banged up his shoulder multiple times, and he ended up tearing his labrum. Okay.
Right.
Can you kind of take us into specifically what a torn labrum is?
Sure. No problem at all. So labral injuries are one of the most common injuries we see in the shoulder, especially in a younger patient population, 35 and under. So the shoulder, in my opinion, is the coolest joint in our whole body, right? Because it can go forward, sideways, backwards, up, down, tremendous kind of range of motion to get our hand out in space. And obviously super important in an athlete to catch the ball, run with the ball, whatever we're doing. So the shoulder itself is basically two bony parts. So there's the ball of the shoulder that fits into the socket of the shoulder. And the labrum is basically a circle or an O-ring or a gasket of soft tissue that is around the socket. And I describe it to patients kind of like the bumpers on a pool table. So, if the top of the pool table is the socket, the bumpers of the pool table is the labrum. And the job of the labrum is the same thing. It tries to keep the ball in the socket, and it tries to keep the pool ball on the table. So, in a labral injury, typically what happens is there's forcible either subluxation or dislocation of the ball in the socket. And so when that ball wants to move out of the socket, it actually tears that labral tissue. So again, to use that pool analogy, it would be like taking one of the bumpers off the end of the pool table and then rolling the ball around, and all of a sudden the ball is going to fall off of the end of the table.
I love your layman's terms analogy for people like me that have no idea of what we're seeing, but you describe it in that pool ball term. That's absolutely perfect, and it gives me that visualization of what that injury is and the significance of it. But what is the rehab process like? How long does that take, and is it a recovery process that could be long or lingering?
Yeah, so number one, I mean, typically these labral injuries do need to be fixed surgically. And so what we do is arthroscopically, not, having to make a big incision anymore, but just the poke hole procedure where we go in with the camera and we're able to bunch up that labral tissue that's been pushed down and torn, and we basically reestablish the bumper. And our job as the surgeon is to put the bumper back in the right spot, and then we get out of the way and let it heal. And usually it's about a 3 or 4 month process for that to heal back to normal. So we'll initially immobilize patients for about the first 4 weeks or so in a sling. That's basically to keep pressure of the ball from pushing on that newly repaired labrum. And then we'll start some passive and then active range of motion. So range of motion is super important for this because, we don't want that shoulder to get stiff. We want it to heal. We want the bumper to be there, but we don't want the stiffness to set in. So it's basically, if we've got a 3-month recovery phase, it's 1 month of immobilization with the sling, 1 month of range of motion, and then 1 month of strengthening. And typically at that point, people are getting back ready for more sports specific activities and being ready for contact and things like that.
Yeah, that timeline sounds about right where he's at. I believe he tore it in December, and he got the medical clearance to participate in his pro day. So he should be, it seems to be, about ready to go for a training camp in July. I don't really see that being an issue. But for a guy like Hunter Luepke, if you were the Cowboys medical staff, players that are coming in dealing with an injury like that, how would you go about handling something like that? Would you keep doing what they were doing, or would you maybe switch it up a bit and do what you guys would do here, say if you were on the
Yeah.
Cowboy staff.
Sure, sure, sure. So a great question, and I think it really comes into two parts. Number one, you've got to learn as much as possible about that specific injury to that specific player as you can, and the arthroscopic pictures during the surgical reconstruction. The extent of the injury, the reviewing all the op notes that kind of tell how bad in this case it was, because it's like anything else. Some of them are easy and a piece of cake, and some of them are more challenging and more extensive. So, and the rehab basically gets tailored to some of that, how bad the injury actually was and how it was fixed. So I think on one side, you've got to really dig deep onto the actual surgical and pathology of the injury. And then on the other side, you've got to look at the player and see how they're progressing and kind of get an idea of, how they've been rehabbing it so far, their expectations, kind of how they're feeling about their process is really important. So I'm not sure if he's coming along and it was kind of a standard, run of the mill labral injury, and he's coming along nicely in the physical therapy and kind of hitting our milestones, what we would expect with another player. I don't think I would really do too much. I'd be encouraging, really make sure that he was following the guidelines, and then make sure he was getting back to where he needed to go. Now, sometimes if people came in with unrealistic expectations or unrealistic timelines, that's when I think you really, as a new organization, need to step in and say, hey, this is how we're going to do it here, and this is what makes more sense for us and our medical staff. If it's kind of outside that normalized box. So I think you just got to take it on a player by player basis and dig into the details, really.
I feel like that last part reminds me of Damone Clark. I don't know if you remember last year; he was one of the first drafted players we talked about. Where man, the range of what he could potentially do was either sit out the whole year or he could potentially come back during the season. I thought you hit the nail on the head with that one. And fortunately for Damone, he was able to come back. His neck healed, and he played well for the Cowboys in his rookie year. So that's why you got to watch Doc Talk, y'all. I got to watch Doc
That's
Talk.
it.
And if you do have any issues that you need to handle in the DFW area, Doc, tell them where they can go to get that help.
Yeah, come see us at the Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Institute. We've got offices in Fort Worth, Mansfield, and Decatur. So we'd love to help you out. Our phone number is 817-529-1900, and you can get us at osmifw.com.
There you have it, man. Our latest edition of Doc Talk with Dr. Boothby. I'm your man, Skywalker Steele. We'll see you guys next time.